Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. I am excited for this one today. We have our first viewer requested topic, and a shout out to Scott for sending this one over.
Thank you very much.
We are talking about how you as a marketplace partner can leverage and build your relationship with Atlassian, the owner of the marketplace. So we're going to cover things like why this is important, how to think about the relationship with Atlassian. We'll also get into the details of how to think about things like rankings on the marketplace, including some keyword research you can do, a few ways to think about badges and programs like staff picks. We'll also talk about co-marketing, cross-promotion opportunities for marketplace partners. And if you stick around to the last bit, I'll share a question that you can ask yourself and your team that will really help you come up with some fun ways to engage with Atlassian and the ecosystem as a whole. And with that, I'm Peter.
And I'm Kate.
And this is Marketplace Growth by a Coil. Here's the topic that we have for today: how to effectively leverage the vendor relationship and partnership with the marketplace owner, specifically asking about things like rankings, badges, spotlights, etc. on the marketplace. If I had to summarize it, I'd say that the question is this: it's how do we think about and build our relationship with Atlassian as the owner of the marketplace? And before we get into any of the tactical stuff, Kate, I'd really like to hear your thoughts on why this is important.
I just remember when I first joined the Atlassian marketplace and logged in to the partner portal and just went, holy moly, there's a lot here to cover off. And then there was the community space and the dev stuff, and it's like, holy moly. So it's very easy to be overwhelmed. And so Simon, Charlie, and I, as the founders of Proforma, quickly came to the realization that we really needed to work smart when it came to Atlassian. So these were some of the things that we did. We very much tried to we first tried to map and understand Atlassian. I think it's got a little bit harder now because there's just more people. So we tried to map what Atlassian was doing. And then from there, we then thought about, well, what we were trying to achieve. So where were our absolute areas of intersect? And they were things like JSM. So then we made sure we understood who's who in the JSM cohort, for example. And so we figured out what mattered most to them and did it fit with what we needed to do for our business. And we were quite strategic about that because otherwise you're literally just flying off in all directions. We also made sure that we read the Atlassian investor letter every quarter.
Yeah.
A really great way, isn't it, Pete? It's an absolute minefield of information with numbers and gives you indications of growth, and just love reading that every quarter. And then I think the other thing was I used to like listening to the leaders of Atlassian if they were giving talks and things. And I know this sounds probably quite strange, Pete, but I used to see what excited them and what lit their eyes up, because then I went, oh, okay, so they're probably going to be pretty serious about this. But sometimes they don't come to fruition or they take a lot longer. And if you spend a lot of your time on some of those things, you may not be doing something else. So you just really need to give a good, hard look on that. Wouldn't you say, Pete?
Yeah, I agree. I've got two questions for you based around some of the things that you said there. First one is mapping Atlassian. Like specifically, can you give us some details, like what that actually entails?
Well, it actually took a little bit of practice and actually trying to work out the org chart. And talking to Atlassians and actually saying, where do you fit in the scheme of things? And if there was a restructure, trying to actually understand how it all worked. And so you would literally try and map. And if you found an org chart, fantastic. So it was doing a little bit of mixture of both. But the other thing that I found was that Atlassians on my experience, Atlassians are great to deal with. They have great values. They're gorgeous human beings usually in the main, and so it's really just easy to connect because they just often, I find, my experience is they try to help you, and so as long as you also try to help them and you don't treat the relationship transactional, you actually treat it as we are working together to build a bigger pie. And so even if that meant at times you you weren't as competitive as probably you could be, it was about actually thinking about how you thought about those relationships. So we used to turn up and try and support as much as we could. So we would fly to Sydney, we would fly to the States for the big events, and we just tried to join in as much as possible and really try to help and understand what Atlassians were trying to do.
Yeah, yeah. I enjoyed that about Think Tilt. Just being active members of the community was, I think, one of the more fun parts of working in the space. Just to get into the details on that a little bit, like we did use HubSpot as a CRM, so we actually did track, not at any creepy level or anything like that, but we did keep a close eye on who's who. And you mentioned the reorgs. Having been in Atlassian, it's not uncommon to have the team shift around a little bit. So it could be a bit tricky, I suppose, to keep track of who's who. And of course, people move on in their careers and go to different companies and stuff. So, I mean, it's just the nature of the beast, I think, is that, people will move on, move up, move over to different teams. So it is important to keep track of who's who and at least spend some time on it.
I think if I'm honest, Pete, I think we had like 250 people on our list.
Yeah, we had a lot. Yeah.
With a lot of product managers, weren't there? And I used to scratch my head going, who's doing what? So,
yeah.
But, rule of thumb, ask.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's some really good advice. And like just building that relationship, it's with Atlassian as a whole, but also the individuals. And I'll echo that, having worked inside Atlassian.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, 201, I enjoyed working with everybody there. So
it's gorgeous. One more thing that I actually think is also important was that, and this was probably before you came on board, Pete, was we actually divided up the tasks. We divided up and conquered. So I focused on one specific part of Atlassian. Simon focused on another. Charlie, being technical, did the technical, because it was impossible to try and cover it yourself. And then also what happens is you duplicate your resources. So we kind of used to say, let's try and do 2 hours a week, etc., because it's very easy to just go down the black hole and spend all your time and actually not focus on your business.
Give us some details of that. Like when you say you divided up the tasks and monitoring, like what were you doing when you say Charlie on the technical side? What was he looking at? Was it just like looking at the DevX team? And so what were you working on primarily then?
Because I was managing sales, support, and business development, I was very much focusing on the side of strategy, the channel, and understanding how that was all working, and the relationship between the solution partners and Atlassian, how that all worked. And also for me, it was looking for the signals of what was important to them. So when a new initiative came out from Atlassian, the three of us used to sit and work it out and say, how much time and effort do we want to put into this? Is this relevant for us? Is it right for us? So, for example, Forge was a really good discussion for us of how much we wanted to do and how much time we were prepared to tinker, for example, with Forge in the early days. So it's really just trying to balance our needs with their needs, but recognizing that you kind of all got to pull in the same direction if you can. There's no point trying to go in a vastly different... We recognize it's be in the slipstream as much as reasonably possible.
And just to keep digging into the details here, if someone wants to take that advice, and you said, we agreed as a team that we're going to spend 2 hours a week on this. Did you actually have that in the diary or the calendar if you're listening in the States? Did you actually put that on the calendar and stick to that every week? Or was it just like on the task list that I'll get to it this week at some point? Like how rigid were you about that?
We were better at it some weeks than others. Let's face it, it's like everything. I'm always talking about process and lists and tasks and prioritization, and you're human. You get it right about 80% of the time. But there were some things that worked exceptionally well for us, and we'll talk about some of that in the tactical stuff. But all in all, it's really understanding what's important to Atlassian is a really important, and what are the obstacles, and is there any way you can help? Is there any way you can help them sell,
Yeah.
So, because if they sell a tool, chances are you can get in there and have a crack.
The bottom line question there, right, is like what is important to Atlassian and how can I tell a story that helps us, right? Helps both of us. And so I actually kind of want to just follow that a little bit and go into the details of if you were to as you divided up the work between the three of you, are there teams that you were paying attention to, like get specific, like was it the DevX blog? Were you on the community? Where were you looking for these signals beyond, say, the partner portal? But taking it a step further, what were you looking at?
Well, we were very much playing, our first priority was the JSM space. So we read about anything we could about JSM, and indeed would go to all the different events, both Atlassian and non-Atlassian, because we wanted to see what the competitors were saying and how they were talking about Atlassian and how we could help Atlassian with that task. Even though we were tiny, we just felt, no, we've got skin in the game here. What else did we do? It was a combination. So it's like everything in life. It was a combination of stuff. So we did a mix. We did a mix of face-to-face, very strong on face-to-face. Now, we were based in Melbourne and Brisbane, not Sydney. So we would actually make the time to go to Sydney for events. We would even go to user group events in Sydney if we thought the topic was big enough. If any of the user groups in Melbourne, less so in Brisbane because it wasn't very active, but we would turn up if there was Atlassians there, because it just gives you a chance to understand a little bit better. And the events were huge for us, huge. So we would go to other app partner events and solution partner events to help them sell and support them with their task. And often they would have Atlassians there. So, it was fabulous. You'd head out for dinner and you'd all sit and chat. And it was just a way of getting to know. I mean, breaking bread, the old-fashioned face-to-face just works a treat. So we would go the big events, the small events, and just go and chat to people, And you know me, at Team, I just love wandering around and having a chat to everybody, as you well know.
I always appreciated working with you at the team event, that it was fun watching you go. You'll hear this around, the ecosystem is very much driven on relationships, and the best way to establish those is by sort of giving into the community, I think, and not to be cliched, but you kind of...
And genuine. And genuine. There's nothing worse than someone's just trying to, you can spot them a mile away, where they're only wanting to talk to certain people and not others. Just be genuine. You actually never know where the nuggets of gold and that's going to help you to understand something is going to come from. Yeah,
and I just want to underscore that, going back to what you mentioned before about how we were watching Atlassian, who was in the, who was on which teams, paying attention to JSM, et cetera, building up a list of 250 plus Atlassian employees or teammates, whatever you want to call them. The intent there wasn't to stalk people. It was to know who's who and how you can help them, right? I mean, that was ultimately how we approached it, which I think paid dividends in the long run. And especially when you showed up at an event like Team or at an ACE event and those people are there, it's like any sort of like LinkedIn relationship. When you meet in real life, there's some sort of fun little spark to that.
And we weren't on the partner council because we weren't big enough, but we knew people who were, and they didn't divulge anything confidential, but it was a really great way of understanding. You could ask them saying who's who, and they'd help you out. So again, it's that collective effort. And I'm not trying to sound, very much Pollyanna or thing, but I do absolutely believe in the power of the collective and the power of community, what can be achieved.
To wrap up on the like why this is an important part and how to approach it, it's really about building relationships, understanding who's who, but also what they're trying to accomplish. So Atlassian as a whole.
Where you fit in. Yeah.
And I think it's a good point as well to say our app worked really well with JSM. Not to say that it didn't work with software or work management, but understanding our ideal customer, part of that was understanding which tool they'd be using. So I think that was really an important part of the approach as well. I'll transition us into some more of the more day-to-day tactical type stuff that you can do as a member of the community, as a marketplace partner. So we'll get into not too deep into the weeds here, but things like how do you be a good member of the community? I think that's really what we're talking about here. It's the relationship with Atlassian, but it's also across the marketplace, the solution partners, customers, everybody. How do you sort of play in that space? So we've got some things that we'll talk about, from rankings, all the badges and like the engagement programs on the marketplace, to potentially co-marketing and doing some cross promotion. We'll start with the ranking. What we've got here is, if you're a marketplace partner and you have access to the marketplace API, you can actually do some keyword research. So leverage the data that you can pull out of the marketplace. Just go beyond the reports that you see and look at how you're ranking for certain keywords. Spy on your competitors a little bit. definitely encourage you to do that. See where everyone's ranking, see where you stand, get a sense of where your opportunities are. And this goes back to other conversations we've had about naming your app something boring, but these keyword and search terms that you surface, you can actually change your product name if you feel the need to and start capturing that stuff. But just paying attention to what customers are looking for in the marketplace is a big way to engage with it just on a really tactical level. Next up, and this is getting more into like the specific Atlassian stuff, is the badges engagement program. So stuff like hitting silver, gold, platinum partner status, staff picks, bug bounty. I think the main thing here is to just participate, right? Get involved.
Yes, but again, understanding what you're trying to achieve. So the partner program, the metal program, silver, gold, platinum, and we set ourselves targets. And that's all about growth. And so, these videos are all about growth. So the reality is you've got to sell to go up the rankings, and then you get more support, and then you figure out, well, okay, if I get that support, what am I going to do? And I think, for example, with the staff picks, and we've got the video on how to present yourself with your app listing and your documentation, all of those things. You're not going to get picked as a staff pick, and it's got a lot more competitive and it's a lot more formal process than when we were at, because we got a staff pick, and that made an enormous difference to our business. So I would say to people, if you can get a staff pick, great, but you've got to make sure that you're very professional, and that means on the support side, and it means on how you deal with people, what you say on your social media, how you support Atlassian in what they're trying to achieve. So just be mindful. Staff pick is a huge, just like a good review is a good endorsement. And like we sometimes got mentioned in webinars, for example, because of where we fitted, and we figured that out, that Atlassian needed us to solve some of the important case studies, business problems. We figured out very quickly that as soon as we were mentioned, whoosh, and the number of enterprise customers said, we saw that you were mentioned by Atlassian, so for us that gives a signal of trust. So for me, the staff pick is put it in your diary, make sure you don't miss it. There's, work through all of the guidelines and the requirements and go, and really, really frankly, go, how do we stack up? How do we stack up against other players?
Yeah, that was on my calendar I think it was every quarter, was it, that we had to do that? And that was just the recurring task. Just get it in, submit it. Yeah. And we were fortunate enough to get staff pick a few times, which was a huge boost. Yeah. But the thing is, you got to be proactive about it. And I just want to underscore that. Just participate in these things. Yeah. You've got to back it up, obviously. If you want a staff pick, it's got to be, as Kate said, you got to have everything in place, but it's worth it. Yeah, it's worth it. The notoriety is worth it. Yeah. Yeah.
Can I talk also a little bit about some of the other initiatives? And I've been 2 years in Atlassian, so some other people might have even more refined views on this. But the bug bounty, I used to hear a number of people saying, is it worth it? Is it not worth it? And again, to us, the bug bounty served two measures. One, we knew it would cost us, but we also knew that potentially they could find stuff for us. Yeah. But more importantly, it also sent the signal to Atlassian that we were serious. And it also sent the signal to our customer, enterprise, because our ideal customer was at an enterprise once we got past a certain stage of maturity. So for us, everything is not singular in thought. Mm-hmm. So the bug bounty was good. Now, cloud fortified, to me, again, if you're in cloud, that's a must. But I understand for some apps that have lots and lots of apps, that's a harder ask. But again, these are all the signals of trust, and you can't underestimate those. And often there's silent conversations that customers don't even tell you, that they're just looking for those as signals.
It's a signal to Atlassian as well, right? Like that's the crux of the question that we're talking about today is like, how do you manage that relationship with Atlassian? And I think that's part of it, right? And as you said, bug bounty is definitely, if you put your hand up for that, it is sending a signal that you're there to be taken seriously. And it is, all those like second order effects of that are just That's really what you're after with that.
Yeah.
Of course, making your product better too. And I guess too, as I say that, we're not just talking signals. Like you've got to walk the walk too, right? So it's not just saying it. You got to show up and actually heartily participate. And speaking of participating, just wanted to mention a few other things that are going on around the marketplace that the community team at Atlassian is like pushing hard on these, and I think it's great. Things like Codegeist, Appy Hours, Apptoberfest, any sort of ACE engagement Atlassian starting to promote that more, like getting marketplace partners involved in that. I think it's fantastic. You don't just have to go to an ACE event if there's going to be an Atlassian there, but it certainly helps, and I think showing up at all these things and at least putting your hand up to say that you're there. I think Atlassian awareness of your product is a huge, huge thing that we don't probably talk about enough, really. Customers are the ones who buy, solution partners help you sell it, but Atlassian's there as well. And the more Atlassian teammates know the products, the better off you'll be. One thing you mentioned before that I want to bring back up is reviews and how important that is to Atlassian, right? Like, so not just that it's a signal to customers there, but Atlassian does pay attention to that on the marketplace. Legitimate reviews, well-written reviews. Are you responding to reviews? All of these are really important signals that go out to the whole marketplace, not just your customers, but to Atlassian as well. They are watching. These are signals to them that you can be trusted and that you're actively and professional. Yeah, there you go. That's the word for it. Is you're professional and you're taking that seriously too. This is part of your relationship with the marketplace as a whole. Going to move on to talking about the question cross promotion and co-marketing. And my approach to this is, I think, just to be proactive about it. If you've got an app on the marketplace, you want to get co-marketing going. Atlassian has a lot of teams doing a lot of work. In my experience, getting anything going with them was I guess difficult. But if you take the approach of you're the one that's going to lead the conversation, go back and answer that question, how can I help Atlassian? And start coming up with stories around that. Are you building on Forge? Are you migrating a big customer? Have you found a unique use case that you can publish and help sort of like bring to the surface that would be good for, say, Jira and yourself? Fantastic. And just lead the charge on that. Don't wait for Atlassian to come to the table and say, yep, we'll help you with that. I think it's really important for marketplace partners to be the ones that are kind of pushing their own story. And then if you have that in the back of your head the whole time, like how will this help others, then you will get that boost from them. So it may not be an explicit co-marketing campaign.
Particularly if you know that's actually the segment or the activity they're targeting. And you can see that through the campaigns. If you're on the partner portal, and the partner portal is a bit strange in that you sometimes don't know if they're talking about app partners or solution partners because it's partner, and you go, okay, what this campaign? Oh, I'm assuming, okay, that's solution partner. But it does give you an indication of how Atlassian are positioning things, and then from that you can take some of that language and apply that into your own. And that's what we used to do. We used to try and reflect back some of the stuff they did, but then also how we can take the use case to the next level. Atlassian's tool got it this far, but with us, you got that far.
Yeah. And that again just goes back to those use cases. Like there was such a huge win for Proforma to have those use cases, and it was exactly that, right? Just here's JSM, and here's JSM with Proforma, and I think we did a good job of telling the right stories. And
also I think I was happening to have a conversation, and Atlassian was having to sell to a customer that wanted a specific use case. And so we worked with them to actually put together the use case very quickly, built it out for them as a demo so that they actually could cover off that requirement, which was really important because it was a very, very big enterprise customer in an important space. Yeah.
And that all came from that keeping track of the company, right? That was the HubSpot thing, right? Just who's working on what's important to them, and just keeping track of that. So it was definitely, it's not a quick hit sort of thing, is it? It's kind of like you just got to keep at it.
Some days you feel like, oh my God, So yeah.
Well, if you have one of those days, push through.
The splat of announcements and initiatives that come at you.
Yeah, I think that's an important one to really really touch on too is like just how you manage that. You mentioned
Well,
it
you
before.
worked in marketing, Pete. Come on. You tell.
Yeah. Well, I think it's less about the marketing side and more about, as you said before, just like all the initiatives, right? And it's like what's happening in the marketplace, what's happening with the product, what's happening on the dev side, and there's just so much to be paying attention to that. Yeah, you have to prioritize what's important for your business too, but it's trying to keep those things in lockstep and just going. We can participate in that, we can't participate in this, whether it be capacity or what have you. It's a decision that you can make, and I guess I'll just say it. Like, I think a lot of marketplace partners in the past have kind of taken a reactionary stance to that. Like, we'll see what they say and then we'll act on it. And instead of that, I think you can be a bit more proactive in making your decisions about when you do engage and when you don't, and what's important for your business.
But I will challenge you there. Sometimes it's good to be reactive. Depends are listening here. I always say there's an opportunity cost for everything. Mm-hmm. And, that can, and I think you're going to ask us about the mistakes, aren't you? Can I talk about one of the mistakes or the traits that I had?
Yeah, absolutely. Go for it.
I used to have this intense sense of fear of missing out, FOMO. It's like, oh my God, are we in the right spot? Are we, I used to have an intense reaction on that, which I think is pretty funny considering it's such a large organisation. And sometimes I think I was a little bit unrealistic about what the individual Atlassians could do. And I would get very excited and talk about an idea because I love ideas and I love chatting to people about ideas. And of course, they would be very polite, but I realised that it's got nothing to do with them. So there's no way knowing they're going to take this in and head off, three divisions across and say, oh, hey, by the way, So I think you have to temper sometimes your expectations, I think,
FOMO is a big thing there, isn't it? And you can start responding to everything that Atlassian says, right? Everything that they push out to the marketplace partners. If you jump every time they say jump, you're going to get kind of tired, potentially.
Yeah. Sore feet, won't you, Pete?
Sometimes you have to react and respond, but that goes back to that just having a deliberate think about it. Sit down with your team and decide what the potential impact on your business is. And then are you going to invest time, money, energy into that? And this isn't to poke at Atlassian, but I don't know that there's a deep understanding of just how much it can cost a marketplace partner team to respond to some of the initiatives that come out. So if you're in the marketplace, it's up to you to decide where do we invest our time, money, etc.
That's right. And can I say, you're not rude, you just explain your rationale. Yeah. That, like we weren't a large team, we were a team of 12, which is a very different equation to an Adaptivist or an AppFire. So we're a team of 12. And so it was very much a case of what can we do and what can't we do. And there's your day-to-day business you've got to do. So I don't want anybody to feel, listening to this thinking, oh my God, we've got to do all of this. We literally learnt and evolved our strategy over time. But there are some principles that you can follow, absolute principles that you can follow. But the number one is it's all about building relationships and being authentic and having integrity in terms of how you're dealing with people. If you're not going to do something, don't do it. If you are going to do something, you do it. And if you now can't do it, then go back to them. Don't ghost them and go off air. Go back to them and say, I haven't been able to do this and we're not going to do this. How does this affect you?
Well, that's a relationship, isn't it? I mean, really, now we're going to get it. You want to talk marital advice for anybody? It's
I'll leave that to you, Kate.
Yeah. No, thanks. My wife tells me what to think. So anyway, I think that, I mean, that. No. I'm kidding. I know. We'll leave that in. Yeah, but I mean, that is at the heart of having a relationship with anybody, but it's true with a company to company thing too, right? It's just, I think that's important too. Just say why. If you're talking to a TPM or something like that, just explain why. But one thing I wanted to touch on, part of Scott's question was talking about cross promotion. If you're a marketplace partner and you've got more than one app, you probably need more than two apps really. But if you have a bunch of apps on the marketplace, something that's I think you can do a lot more cross promotion yourself. And I don't always see partners doing this, even on their listing pages. It's, have you seen our other apps? But what you can actually do is, if you download all the transaction reports, you can run some analysis on those reports to see if there's any correlation between customers that purchase app number 1 and app number 2. And if you can see where those linkages are, it's not going to be causation necessarily, but if you can see strong correlation between 2 or 3 apps of your own, lean into that. And I think there's a huge opportunity there to do cross promotion yourself and to start really looking at how do we make this a really cool user experience. If they're buying from one vendor, great. And if you see opportunities to expand your portfolio into larger enterprises, that's one great way to do it. I don't think that you're going to see Atlassian and the marketplace doing sort of cross promotion between apps or different vendors. That's kind of up to the vendors themselves. But you can take this on your own shoulders, do that correlation analysis, see which of your apps are related in terms of sales, and then just push on that. That is down in the weeds, but just something that I've recently been thinking about, and I think that's an opportunity that a lot of companies could take advantage of.
That's a good one.
I'm going to go back now. Are there any other missteps or potential potholes that partners might run into when thinking about how they engage with Atlassian? Anything else that you'd highlight, maybe even just like don't do's for people?
Don't do fake reviews.
Yeah.
Don't do fake reviews. And hijacks what's trying to be achieved. And what am I saying by that?
Of that?
Is that an initiative will be launched, and for example, Atlassian will be trying to, in the spirit of openness, trying to openly start to talk about some of the issues and responding not in a constructive way, throws a grenade into it, and there's ways of dealing with conflict. Yeah. Is that too deep? Is that too deep? Maybe
No, we're getting deep and meaningful today, Kate. That's all right.
Okay. Hope that's all right, people.
I do think we'll wrap it on that one, but yeah, I'll second that. I think, not go with the flow, but yeah, be supportive. And it's okay to ask questions. But yeah, I have seen some over the years, some sort of combative comments and stuff like that. And I think it works for some, but yeah, by and large, you are dealing with people at Atlassian too. And I think that's important to remember. All right, we've got some additional resources we will put in the description below the video. Atlassian has guides on the staff pick, co-marketing opportunities, how to get your app featured in other ways in, say, categories and stuff like that on the marketplace, and how to optimize your listing. If you want to hear what we think about optimizing your listing, go check out the video on the channel. We have 3 tips. Well, we promised 3, we delivered 6 tips on how to optimize your marketplace listing. We'll include links to all of that down in the description below. I'm going to end on a quick question for you, Kate. If you're short on time, small team, and you had to pick one of these Atlassian engagement tactics, which one would you focus on first?
And I have 2.
Go for it.
I think you have to figure out where you want to play, like the strategic stuff that I talked in the first place. And then I think for me, I would be focusing on probably my staff picks and my reviews and rankings.
Got it. Okay, you heard it there. That's it for today, folks. I think bottom line is you don't have to wait for permission to get started on this stuff. Just get in, get going, take the lead, be a genuine, helpful member of the community, and Atlassian will take note of that. And Atlassians themselves will take notice of that. If you don't have time to do all of this stuff, follow Kate's advice, staff picks, go for good reviews. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. We absolutely love having you here with us. We're having a lot of fun making these videos, but we do want to hear from you. If you have topics that you want us to discuss on here, if you have questions, comments, anything like that, please leave it in the comments below or find us on LinkedIn. Until next time, see ya.
Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.